Thanks very much, Taj, and thank you for inviting me to speak this afternoon. I'd like to say the work I'm describing here was funded through BHP Billiton and Sustainable Cities Grand Challenge. So I'd like to thank them for the funding that made this possible. And as you'll see from the title there, it's an exploratory piece of work to actually see how we might develop an interactive tool to explore with households their resource use and how this might be reduced. Because at the end of the day, a lot of what we've heard today about improved technologies and so on, it comes down to the extent to which people are willing to take on those technologies. As we've said, there might well be financial considerations and so on, but also the extent to which they're willing to change the way they actually carry out their activities. And our feeling is that quite often these things are a little bit siloed, and in fact potentially you get bigger effects by looking across a whole day or a whole week and looking at the way that people organise their lives, how they use appliances and things in the process, and what opportunity there might be for changing that. So the objectives of the study were, first of all, to review the existing tools that are available for households to examine their current and potential resource consumption. These are usually self-using tools on the internet or something, but just to see what was available. And then to develop a specification for a computer-based interactive household tool, initially to be used with researchers over an interview lasting an hour or two, actually exploring in depth the way households organise their lives. First of all, recording current infrastructure, the dwelling and the appliances that are available, then describing and mapping existing behaviour patterns and how that links to use of appliances and resources. Then explore with them future potential scenarios. And we're initially focusing on energy in the way we've thought about it. We've designed it so that we can also be looking at water and other forms of resource consumption as well. An important part of the study was to actually involve stakeholders in specifying what they felt would be a useful way of approaching the topic, and then getting their reactions to some of the draft proposals. As far as user requirements are concerned, we held a workshop initially on the Isle of Wight, where there have been a number of initiatives, Eco Island and so on, to improve efficiency and raise awareness of energy saving and resource saving among the population. And we showed them a number of existing tools that are available on the web and so on. And a number of we got quite a lot of feedback that we've tried to take account of. For example, most of the tools give you a little thing that says, congratulations, you've saved 3 tons of carbon or something. And that's completely meaningless to most people. They were quite interested in comparisons with people like them or with the best, whatever, and they found that quite interesting and challenging. But quite often they felt the stuff available on the web can get boring and confusing and so on. So what they wanted in the tool was, first of all, to be very clear, is it a tool that they would be expected to use on their own, or would it be something done interactively with an interviewer and a researcher? They'd like outputs in things that they could understand, like money savings as well as carbon, or potential proportionate savings or something like that, and provide a comparison or a target and ensure that the thing is interesting and clear. This is an example of a tool that's already on the web, Act on CO2, which you can go through, specify something about your household and your average behaviour. And then at the end of that, it will give you an idea of what your total carbon footprint is in terms of things in the home, travel, and appliances. And then it will compare it with national average or people like you and so on. And people like that comparison. But as I say, 4.46 tonnes per year doesn't really mean anything to most people. So what we've done is produce, as it were, a set of screens that take you through a process exploring energy use in households and other resource use as well. There are about 80 screenshots altogether, so I've just given you a few examples. But essentially it starts off getting information about household members, details of each person, characteristics of the dwelling, characteristics of the appliances, those that are at the dwelling level or at the room level, lighting in particular rooms like here, or mobile appliances like phones or portable computers, and then vehicles, cars. Then look at current behaviour, then give them feedback on how much resource that is using, and then explore potential future scenarios that involve both changing the types of appliances that are being used and changing patterns of behaviour, and ending with an assessment. So I'm just going to show you a few of the screens, sort of mock-up screens for this. And we've also been thinking at the same time about the programmability and the data that will be available to input into this. But this was the purpose of the study was to sketch out what the tool would look like as a basis for then funding its development. So very simply, standard questions about type of dwelling, age of dwelling. In Britain, these are quite important cut-offs in terms of different standards for insulation and so on. Then we get down to individual rooms, and the idea is we would either import a plan of the dwelling if it's available, or if not, we'd use a schematic one, and then we'd explore with people whether they've got loft insulation, wall insulation, type of window insulation, and so on, and go through a screen on that. And then we go down to individual rooms, and we'd give a list of appliances and tick off the ones that are available to people that are fixed in each room in the house. And then the same with mobile things like mobile phones, mobile computers, portable computers and so on, and then vehicles in the household, from cars to motorbikes to cycles and so on. Sort of note what's available, and in each case, to drill down, I didn't put them in here just to save time, but essentially in each case then to drill down and understand the type of vehicle, the make, the model and so on, against which we'd have information on fuel consumption and so on. And then, having collected information about the characteristics of the dwelling, the features of the dwelling itself, the appliances available in different rooms and so on, we then move on to the second aspect, which is actually exploring with people their daily patterns of behaviour. So we've identified for each person in the household, and then essentially the idea is to work through for each person how they spend their time in the day. So, for example, again, I haven't showed you all the shots that would input the data, but essentially if we might start off with the mother who's sleeping till only 6:15 in the morning in this case, getting up, doing a number of things, including having a bath, also listening to the radio and doing other things, then having breakfast, which is done at the same time as the father. So there'll be a thing in there for saying, did you do it with anybody else? If so, that pops up automatically. So you work through the days for people for the different activities. We've done this before, and it works very well with people. And what we do is we have 3 different levels there: activities in the home, which are marked up there, then travel, and then activities out of the home. And for each of these activities then, essentially, we'll ask people where in the house the activity took place. So, for example, if somebody's having breakfast, and then in that particular room, which of the appliances were there that they actually used as part of that. When we get on to travel, then we move into the set of travel slides, essentially. So we've moved from the home to the middle one for travel now. And then we ask people a series of questions, which, and you can see we'll have a primary activity, which is which is travel. So it's walking to the station, taking the train, and walking at the other end. But in parallel, we're interested in secondary activities that might also consume electricity or energy or resources. So listening to MP3 player or something like that, or using the mobile phone while on the train or the computer. And then that gets added in and built into the day. And so we build up complete days for each member of the household. And then the idea, when that's done and completed, based on the information they've given us and profile information we have about that sort of family, the characteristics of those sorts of appliances, we can then give a resource use report focusing on energy specifically, or CO2, water usage, cost, waste, things like that. That's the general idea. And then we can explore with people how their behaviour might change in the future in 2 ways. First of all, replacing appliances. So, for example, if somebody has a particular model of cooker at the moment, we can explore with them how much energy they're using, estimated, and the cost of that, and then search a database to see if they were to replace that, potentially what the energy savings might be, obviously taking account of the cost of replacement. And then when we do that, if we then explore with people about how their activity patterns might change over time, then there'd also be a check in there. So just in case somebody was reporting that they were using an appliance they no longer had, then in a sense one could draw that to their attention. So basically it's about getting the information, what's happening in the household, existing behaviour, link that to appliances and resource use, and then start exploring potential for having more resource efficient appliances and also changing behaviour. Maybe by changing mode of transport and so on to save money and reduce resources. So that's, as I say, there are about 80 or 90 of those. I've just picked a few to give you a sort of flavour. What we're going to be doing shortly is to hold some workshops with local stakeholder groups in Haringey to assess their reactions to this proposal and modify it before we finalise it and prepare it for a grant application. Also present it to academic and practitioner audiences and then, as I say, secure funding for the full development of that tool. I should say that co-investigator Rob Hickman's in the audience. He asked the last question, so he's very good at answering them as well. Dr. Steve Laurie and Leon Scher were heavily involved in putting the work together, and we've had support on Eco Island down the Isle of Wight and also from people from London Borough and Haringey, and as I said, financial support from the institutions here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Peter. Any questions that people have? There's a question over there. And a question over there to the left as well.
Hi there. I was involved with the Act on CO2 calculator development, so really interested in what you're doing here, which seems to be another level down into...
Try and drill a bit deeper.
Yeah. When we were creating the calculator, it was always a fine line between how much you could ask of people versus drop off or before the end of the journey they go through. Yeah. And we had, I think we had 40 questions that you'd answer if you went through the whole thing. Now you were saying you've got 90 screens.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, kind of in terms of what was your drop? I guess because you were doing it as a pilot, the drop-off, you were doing it with them, weren't you? So
yeah. I mean, the point is at the moment, I mean, we did have these discussions early on with people, whether it's something essentially they'd use themselves or something we'd use with them with an interviewer as a research tool. And the idea at the moment is for using it as a research tool with people where you might spend 2 or 3 hours and you might pay them some money for doing it. It's a way of really exploring what people's strategies might be. I mean, there are 2 outputs really. I mean, from the research tool, if you like. One is to find out what strategies people adopt or are willing to adopt, or what information they need to adopt them that one could then use in campaigns and things to help reduce resource use. But also to see to what extent one might be able to slim it down so it could be something people could use themselves. But at this stage, no, it's something that would be a 2 or 3 hour interview with households, with an interviewer there and so on, with the idea of seeing what we could then strip out to make it something people could use on their own. Thanks.
Question over there.
You've partly answered my question with the previous question, if that makes sense. But is the ultimate aim that I would be able to log on to it and have a go as a sort of private individual in my own use? Because I'm a bit of a hardcore eco person, so that would really appeal to me, doing that level of analysis. Is that somewhere you want to take it in the end, or do you not know?
Yeah, as I say, I think there are 2 distinct outputs. One, to use it as a research tool to look at behavioural response and to see how that's shaped, what factors influence it. But then to see how we can make sure the thing runs smoothly and maybe streamline it a bit so it could be available online for people to use themselves. We might go from individual households to working community groups and then to make it more widely available, I think do it over stages. Yeah, thank you.
Question up there.
You can't ask a question.
Nobody's going to answer a question.
Just generally, and maybe for the person who did the Act on CO2 calculator as well, do we know the range of impact of use of tools like this? Do they, in the end, affect behaviour by 10%, 5%, or 1%, or 50%? Do you have a feeling for that from your previous work, Peter, in activity, travel changes, or from the Act on CO2 work? Do we know what level of impact that work had on behaviours?
We did quite a lot of research into sort of the user experience and then the takeaway messaging. What we didn't do is follow up. But from the takeaway messaging and the kind of pledge inside of things, because at the back end of the Act on CO2 calculator, you could choose your own action plan to what you were going to do. And we have that. But what we never had, because it was an anonymous online form, was the ability to follow up with what did you actually do, which was planned but didn't come to pass for whatever reason. But in terms of what people pledged to do after going through it, it was a very, very successful tool for engagement. But what we didn't have, the missing piece of the jigsaw, was the follow-up about what actually have you done.
I mean, I can give very brief answers. As I say, I think one of the main outputs is understanding, as I say, the processes and so on. But work that's been done in a more simpler way, more focusing on just on the daily travel patterns, has led to about a 15% reduction in car use overall, if it's been done in a fairly comprehensive way. But that's just on use of car, not the whole resource use across activities.